On the day my childhood sweetheart achieved the top honors in the imperial examination, he arrived with 66 betrothal gifts to propose marriage. Filled with joy, I hid behind the screen, eagerly awaiting his request. Yet, the one he sought to marry was not me, but my half-sister. My father hesitated before speaking. "Nephew, surely you must have mistaken the person." Pei Yuani shook his head, his eyes filled with tenderness. "I have long admired the second Miss Xue, while I have always regarded the eldest Miss Xue as nothing more than a sister. My soul felt as though it had left my body. After he departed, I stumbled after him, only to overhear Pei Yuani speaking to his classmate with a frivolous laugh. That day while drinking, I mentioned wanting to enjoy the pleasure of having both sisters, like the legendary Huang and Nuying, marrying into the same family. You'll see then how I win over the aloof and elegant elder sister and the charming, lovely younger sister." His classmate looked uncertain, but the eldest Miss Xue has always been known for her pride. The man dismissed it with a wave. "Xue Huan and I were once engaged. If she doesn't marry me, who else would she marry? The playboy from the general's mansion who frequents the pleasure quarters. Besides, my father holds the rank of first-grade grand tutor, while her family is merely a fourth-grade director of the Imperial Academy. If Xue Huan becomes my noble concubine, would that truly be a slight to her?" My heart ached so intensely it felt suffocating. Since that was the case, I no longer wanted Pei Yuani. As for that playboy, I would marry him. The two men continued talking in the corridor, the scholar looking uneasy as he said, "Brother Pei, I have also heard about the eldest Miss Xue's family circumstances. She lost her mother at a young age, and Director Xie is often occupied with official duties, while the concubines in the inner household are far from easy to manage. Over the years, she has likely lived in the mansion as if treading on thin ice, and we have all heard whispers of the unsavory affairs within the inner courtyard. If not for her maternal grandfather's family holding the rank of third-grade commander, she might not even have a place to stand. Now, with what you are doing, I fear." The man's words trailed off, his phrasing tactful, yet as the person involved, I felt as though my entire body were on fire, as if someone had forcibly stripped me of my clothes and exposed me under the bright sun. Leaning against the corner of the corridor, I clenched my handkerchief tightly, my knuckles turning pale. In my childhood, my mother was tricked by Xue Qingling's mother into falling into a cold pond. At that time, my mother was pregnant, which caused her to bleed and severely damaged her health. She passed away not long after. My father was heartless. Though he knew there was something suspicious about the incident, he publicly claimed that my mother had slipped accidentally. After my mother's death, I remained the legitimate eldest daughter in name, but my daily necessities were heavily skimmed by the servants, leaving me with almost nothing. Under the deliberate suppression of my stepmother and my father's tacit approval, during the most difficult year, I became so thin that I couldn't even fill out a slightly larger skirt. If my maternal grandparents hadn't taken me back in time, I would likely have died silently in the back alley servants' quarters. Now, although I manage the household affairs, only I know the hardships I've endured along the way. Outsiders are somewhat aware of these matters, and Pei Yuani, who has been my childhood friend for over a decade, couldn't possibly be unaware. I couldn't help but lean forward to look at him, my eyes holding a hope I hadn't even realized was there. Pei Yuani was dressed in a moon-white brocade robe, his face radiant and composed, but the words he spoke carried a chill as biting as the lingering cold of early spring. "Isn't this better? Even if the drowning person is unwilling, they will still cling to that last lifeline." My shoulders slumped, the color drained from my face, leaving only a deathly pallor. So, what I thought was a perfect match was merely my own delusion. He, Pei Yuani, had never held me in any regard. Never. I momentarily lost my strength, and the box in my arms fell to the ground, rolling out two yellowed clay figurines, crudely made, one male and one female. Those were the figurines Pei Yuani and I had molded together as children. Back then, the boy grinned with a gap-toothed smile, his eyes squinting with laughter. "Ah Huan, we will be like these little figures, together forever, never apart." My nose tingled with sorrow. and I only had time to pick up the girl-shaped clay figurine before hastily ducking into the room. The two people by the waterside pavilion were already walking toward this spot. The scholar's voice was filled with surprise and doubt. The noise was just here. How strange, there's no one around, only a clay figurine. My heart pounded like a drum as I crouched beneath the paper-covered window, staring intently at the clay doll visible through the crack in the door, my fists clenched unconsciously. My emotions were complex at that moment. Part of me hoped Pei Yuani would remember the past, while another part hoped he wouldn't, but that hope was quickly dashed. Pei Yuani let out a scornful laugh and crushed the figurine under his foot. It's nothing valuable anyway, probably just something a servant dropped. Come on, I heard a new performer has arrived at Drunken Fragrance Pavilion, let's go listen to some tunes. Their footsteps gradually faded into the distance, the scholar's hesitant words drifting back intermittently. But, you just sent the betrothal gifts today, Pei Yuani replied dismissively. That person isn't Shui Huan, and besides, climbing the social ladder isn't that easy. I stared blankly at the lump of grey clay, then looked around. Whether by coincidence or not, this side room was the very place where Pei Yuani and I had once molded clay figures together. The room, my eyes reddened, and I took out from my bosom the little figure with its hair tied in childlike pigtails, suddenly shedding tears. So, the brother who once called me a Huan was already gone. He died in the depths of the glamour and splendor of the officialdom and worldly pleasures. I returned to the main hall in a daze. My half-sister, Shui Qingling, was toying with the necklace around her neck. When she saw me enter, her eyes held a hint of insinuation. Sister, isn't this little trinket that Brother Pei gave me yesterday lovely? I stared fixedly at that ornate neckpiece, my heart suddenly tightening. Instinctively, I covered the bracelet on my wrist. Though the bracelet was extremely plain, it was the token of affection Pei Yangchuan had given me yesterday, but upon closer inspection, the material of the necklace in Shui Qingling's hand was exactly the same as my bracelet. I feared this bracelet was nothing more than leftover scraps from that necklace. Shui Qingling's eyes held a clear, malicious glint as she glanced at my sleeve before lifting her gaze to meet mine. Sister, to be honest, I've only met Brother Pei 3 times, yet he has already taken a liking to me. I never intended to compete with you, especially considering the precious bond you've shared as childhood sweethearts for over a decade. But alas, sister, you simply aren't likable. My nails dug deep into my palms until beads of blood seeped out, then slowly, I released my grip. My gaze shifted to my father, seated in the place of honor. He remained silent, sipping his fragrant tea, watching everything unfold with cold indifference, as if it had nothing to do with him. I took a deep breath, swallowing the bitterness that filled my heart. Father, I heard that the General's Manor sent an official matchmaker today to request my birth chart. I am willing to give it a try. Father was taken aback for a moment, then broke into a smile for the first time. The General's Manor is excellent. Although it may not be as prestigious as the Prime Minister's manor, it is still a family of high-ranking officials, which would greatly benefit my career. Although Qin Zhao is fond of women, but what man isn't? Shui Huan, I knew I wasn't wrong about you. You truly live up to being the model noblewoman appointed by the Empress, clear-headed and knowing how to use family ties to support your maternal clan. Good, very good. Under Shui Qingling's amused gaze, I lowered my eyes, hiding the pain within them. Over the years, I have never made a single mistake in virtue, speech, appearance, or skill, all to build a better reputation for myself and gain a bit more confidence. If I were to marry into the Pei family someday, I wouldn't want to be looked down upon. Now it seems that this foresight and planning were indeed right. Although Pei Yangchuan's heart has changed, I have caught the eye of a first-rank general's household. In this ruthless world, what can a woman rely on besides holding tightly to the power she can grasp? What use is there in counting on the fickle hearts of others? Pei Yuani, you want me, Shui Huan, to be your concubine. But I truly live up to your words about being ambitious. I will not only become the legitimate wife but also a titled lady of equal standing to your household. As for this so-called love, I can do without it. I had thought that, given the affection between Pei Yuani and me, even if we couldn't part on good terms, We would at least not end up in such an ugly situation. Little did I expect that the very next day, he would come to my home to force a confrontation, demanding that my father forcibly elevate Xue Qingling's mother to the status of principal wife. His reason was grand and righteous. The mistress of the Prime Minister's residence could not be a daughter born of a concubine. When I received the news, I was so flustered that I knocked over the teacup my mother had left me. It must be known that Pei Yuanyi was nearly abducted by human traffickers as a child. If not for my mother risking her life to save him, how could he have achieved the glory he enjoys today? He would likely have vanished without a trace, his future uncertain. Yet now, even if his heart has changed and he looks down on me in every way, he should not be so ungrateful. Pei Yuanyi sent someone to arrange a meeting with me, at the very waterside pavilion courtyard where I had lost half of my pride. When I hurriedly arrived, there was only one unexpected person there, Xue Qingling. She stood under the locust tree, wearing a water-red brocade butterfly-patterned skirt that was particularly glaring. It was the latest style from Zhangsheng Pavilion, which I had specifically asked the shopkeeper to reserve. I usually dress plainly, but I thought that on the day Pei Yuanyi proposed to me, I should be more vibrant. When I went to pick it up that day, Pei Yuanyi said the color was too frivolous and ostentatious, not suitable for me, and he took it away on his own. I thought it was his possessiveness acting up, so I didn't mind it, and my heart even felt as sweet as if wrapped in candied fruit. Little did I expect that he would turn around and give this skirt to my half-sister. I pursed my lips tightly. The hem of my skirt crumpled into unsightly folds. Although I had already made up my mind to give up on Pei Yuanyi, my flesh and blood heart still ached dully. Over a decade of childhood affection was not something that could be easily abandoned. Xue Qingling approached me, her mouth close to my ear. Xue Huan, do you know where Pei Lang stayed during the Lantern Festival yesterday? My throat tightened, and an absurd thought flashed through my mind. She curled the corners of her lips, leaving me no room for illusions. It's staying at the Autumn Water Pavilion, that is, the Autumn Water Pavilion just across a bluestone path from your courtyard. Tilda. I bit my lip until it bled. Xue Qingling didn't stop. Xue Huan, do you know what Pei Lang said last night when he was moved by passion? He said you're too proper and strong-willed. It's boring. You, her eyes were filled with venom, just like your birth mother, who was schemed to death by my mother. Useless. I trembled with anger all over, but I forcefully suppressed the surging rage. Since I took charge of the household affairs, how many dirty and despicable things have I not seen? Xue Qingling used Pei Yuanyi's name to arrange a meeting with me today, deliberately provoking me into taking action. Clearly, she has ill intentions. How could I easily fall into her trap? Xue Qingling, your mother was originally a singing girl. Even if she turned respectable, she could only ever be a concubine. I spoke with resentment. Xue Qingling's eyes suddenly filled with resentment, which then transformed into a flicker of cunning. She abruptly fell backward, weeping as if rain were drenching pear blossoms. Sister, I know you're unhappy about me marrying Pei Lang, but, you shouldn't take your anger out on me like this. Pei Lang, making my mother the principal wife, is also for the sake of both our families' reputations. Behind me came the sound of hurried footsteps, mingled with the cold scent of cypress wood. I was shoved to the ground. By the time I got back on my feet, the bracelet on my wrist had already broken in two. My eyes filled with sorrow, a bitter smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Pei Yuanyi glanced over the ground, a flicker of unease flashing in his eyes, yet he still shielded Xue Qingling, glaring at me angrily. Xue Dublin, it was indeed right to make you a concubine. With such jealousy, how could you ever be worthy of being the mistress of my Pei family? I took a deep breath, my gaze sweeping over Xue Qingling's face before settling on the familiar features of Pei Yuanyi. The man's deep affection from yesterday and his cold, stern gaze today gradually overlapped. The fervor in my heart completely cooled, and my voice turned. I see, Pei Yuanyi, do you know that my mother's death is inextricably linked to Xue Qingling's mother? Pei Yuanyi's arrogance instantly diminished by more than half, and his sharp edges softened. Good, from now on you will all be sisters sharing the same inner chamber. Please, for my sake, let's just consider this matter settled. I was so angry that I laughed instead. Pei Yuanyi, Xue Huan, will not marry you. And one more thing, you have no face to save here with me. Pei Yuanyi lowered his gaze, holding Xue Qingling as he strode out. As he passed by me, his tone was low, carrying a bone. Chilling coldness. RWN, if you're not obedient, I will make you obedient. Pei Yuanyi's revenge came swiftly. I never imagined that this familiar person, once their heart changed, could wield a knife so swiftly and so precisely, so vicious. On the day the female official's results were announced, the government officers came to my door. I had thought that was my red envelope after all. I was Arinoned talented woman in the capital that day. The Grand Princess was overseeing the exam. After reading my policy essay, she praised it with admiration, saying I was sure to come out on top. Yet, on the golden slip, the name written clearly and neatly was 3 characters, Xue Qingling. I couldn't believe it and checked several times, even asking the officials repeatedly, is there any other red envelope? When it was confirmed multiple times that this was the only one, my hands dropped weakly, and tears streamed down my face. All the late nights I spent studying, nearly ruining my eyes, the path to an official career I had paved, all of it came to nothing. It was at this moment that Pei Yuanyi, holding Xue Qingling's hand, walked through the door. He looked at the tear at the corner of my eye, a flicker of pity flashing in his gaze, but it quickly vanished. Huan, who in the capital doesn't know your reputation as a talented woman? What use do you have for the ranking in this grand examination? I have decided to give the top spot to Qingling. After all, she is a concubine's daughter. Since you are unwilling to let Aunt Liu become the official wife, you should at least give Qingling some compensation. My pupils trembled as I met my half-sister's triumphant gaze. The man had no idea that I had made a bet with my greedy biological father. If I could enter the officialdom, he would be willing to preserve my mother's reputation and keep the position of the legitimate wife vacant. After all, nowadays the court is filled with undercurrents and is exceptionally perilous. If I could enter officialdom, he would be able to thrive between the new and old schools. But if I could not, he would, to curry favor with the Prime Minister, elevate concubine Liu to the status of principal wife. Now that things have come to this, how can it be changed once the red brush has been set down? Everything has lost any room for maneuver. My throat moved, the color drained from my face, leaving only a deathly pallor. I, Xue Huan, am truly useless, unable even to protect my mother's posthumous reputation. Seeing this, Pei Yuanyi frowned deeply. For a woman to appear in public is already contrary to propriety. Being my concubine, is it truly such a disgrace to you? I gave a bitter smile, with hatred simmering in my eyes. Pei Yuanyi, that top scholar position of yours, if I hadn't helped you with the exam topics, how could you have ever achieved such glory? But now you have pulled the rug out from under me, turning years of my hard study into nothing but bubbles. I truly wish I had never met you. Pei Yuanyi's face turned as dark as ink, his teeth clenched, his words laced with threat. This is not up to you. Who in the capital doesn't know how closely you are associated with me? An outsider, your reputation is tarnished, and with the prominence of my Pei family's status, no one dares to provoke the tiger. Xue Huan, you are already a caged bird. Even if you don't become a concubine, you must. I gave a bitter smile, clutching the red envelope, and stumbled out. Pei Yuanyi's eyes darkened. Huan, where do you want to go? Xue Qingling gently tugged at the man's sleeve, her eyes and brows full of charm. Brother Pei, I never had any intention of entering officialdom in the first place. I only seek the reputation of a talented woman. As for that red envelope, if my elder sister wants it, she can have it. Just, sister, you're not planning to go tattle to the princess, are you? I don't mind, but I'm afraid it might harm your reputation. Brother Pei. Pei Yuanyi's expression shifted between dark and light as he sternly rebuked, Xue Huan, if you turn back now, I can still pretend nothing happened. After all, it's just an empty title. But if you remain obstinate and insist on making a scene, his eyes were filled with icy frost, don't blame me for being ruthless. I didn't even look back. Pei Yuanyi, our bond ends today. From now on, we are through. Pei Yuanyi laughed, his laughter sharp and trembling with the violent heaving of his chest. Don't you dare regret this. I ordered the sedan bearers in the mansion to prepare the sedan chair and headed to the residence of the Grand Princess. I, Shui Huan, am by no means a lump of clay to be kneaded at will. Since Pei Yuani has already shown such heartlessness, I will tear off all pretense of cordiality with him. I want him to know that even a rabbit, when cornered, can bite off a piece of a wolf's flesh. I walked too hastily, failing to notice the sinister gaze of the man in the straw hat at the street corner. As soon as I lifted the sedan curtain, a large hand dragged me inside. I was about to call for help when a silk handkerchief was pressed over my mouth and nose. The pattern of the handkerchief was familiar, adorned with the roses that Shui Qingling loved most. The flowers were delicate and vibrant, yet their stems were covered in thorns. Pei Yuani stood at a distance, watching coldly from afar. He hadn't intended for things to go this way, but Shui Huan's temperament was truly unyielding, refusing to bend. It was only right to temper her properly. As he watched the sedan chair gradually being carried away, Pei Yuani felt an indescribable emptiness in his heart, as if he were about to lose something precious. But how could that be? Although those people were brought by Shui Qingling, he had repeatedly warned them not to lay a hand on Shui Huan. It was all just for show. As the legitimate eldest son of the Prime Minister's residence, those unruly commoners would certainly, and absolutely dare not, be of two minds. He would report to the authorities shortly, and once the news of Shui Huan being abducted by bandits spread, her reputation for being impure would surely spread throughout the capital. If Shui Huan wanted to avoid being drowned in a pig cage by then, she would have no choice but to willingly marry him. Pei Yuani, as a concubine. The man withdrew his gaze, glanced at Shui Qingling's features, which bore a slight resemblance to Shui Huan's, and suddenly recalled the night of the imperial examination. Shui Wan, with an elegant and composed demeanor, calmly picked up her brush and wrote several essays on predicted topics. Analyzing them with clear and logical reasoning at the time, he thought she was overly ambitious, believing that the perspectives of the court officials were beyond the comprehension of a woman. Yet, the questions and answers in the palace examination turned out to be almost identical to what she had described, leaving him startled and uneasy. A woman without talent is virtuous, but Shui Wan was simply too outstanding. This was not good, as it could easily lead to a restless heart and give rise to improper thoughts. She, Shui Huan, should be like an ordinary woman, clinging to a man like a dodder vine, guarding his household for him, rather than getting involved in the disputes of the new learning, where a single misstep could lead to her being utterly crushed. He, Pei Yuani, did nothing wrong. Though he had his own selfish motives, it was also, for her, Shui Huan's sake. In the dilapidated temple on the outskirts of the city, I was drenched with a bucket of cold water. The bone-chilling cold pierced straight to my heart, jolting me awake. Several bandits rubbed their hands eagerly. The women from these high-class households are truly different, so delicate and tender, even more enticing than those whipwaists in the brothels waving handkerchiefs to attract customers. Look at that figure, slender waist and long legs. An old man like me can hardly imagine how intoxicating it would be to have her wrapped around me. Don't rush, everyone will get their turn. We'll make sure this little lady is thoroughly satisfied. Their words were so vulgar and crude that I felt utterly humiliated and wished I could die on the spot. I forced myself to stay calm and shouted sternly, "Do you know who my father is? He is the Chancellor of the Imperial Academy, a fourth-rank official. I am the legitimate daughter of his household. If anything happens to me, the Criminal Investigation Department will not let you off lightly." The one-eyed leader laughed upon hearing this. "We are all desperate men with our lives hanging by a thread. What future do we have? If we are unlucky enough to be caught, so be it, we'll die when we die. But before that, we get to taste a beauty like you." His eyes gleamed with greed as he raised his knife and cut the sash at my waist. "We've already made a profit just by having you here." The skirt fell to the ground, revealing the soft, moon-white gauze robe underneath, and everyone's eyes went wide. Swallowing sounds rose and fell one after another. Those wolfish, tiger-like eyes seemed ready to devour me whole. My face flushed crimson, and my lips trembled uncontrollably. Just then, a servant boy sauntered in from outside, asking with an air of arrogance, Miss Shui, my master from the Prime Minister's residence has sent me to ask, are you willing to become a concubine of your own free will? Only then did I realize that all of this was Pei Yuanyi's doing. In my frantic anger, a metallic taste surged up my throat, but I forced myself to swallow it back down. Given the current perilous situation, I had no choice but to feign compliance for the time being. Just as I was about to speak, a broadsword swept past the servant's head. The astonished head was flung high into the air, and after landing, it was kicked out the door. The one-eyed man scoffed disdainfully, "You little brat, do you really think we care about that so-called Prime Minister's mansion? I am the chief of the Azure Dragon stronghold." My pupils suddenly contracted, and my heart tightened into a knot. I have long heard of this Azure Dragon stronghold. Rumor has it that they are ruthless, specializing in plundering wealthy merchants. Countless women have fallen victim to their cruelty, and by the time they are rescued, they are often left in an unrecognizable state. The imperial court has also attempted to suppress these bandits, but once they retreat into the deep mountains, they vanish without a trace, making them incredibly difficult to track down. I was utterly panicked and blurted out without thinking, shouting, "Do you know that my future husband is none other than the ghost-faced general, who gallops across the battlefield, while in the capital? I too have heard of a young prodigy beyond the frontier, his face hidden behind a ghostly mask, who kills without mercy. The number of enemy heads he has piled into mounds is terrifying, striking fear into the hearts of the invaders, a figure as dreadful as a god of slaughter." I shouldn't have spoken. As soon as the words left my mouth, the bandit's eyes turned bloodshot. "So you're that butcher's fiancé? What a stroke of luck from heaven. He destroyed our stronghold, and now we'll play his woman to death." They tore at my clothes, their eyes bloodshot, lunging at me one after another. My courage shattered, and my heart swelled with overwhelming hatred for Pei Yuanyi. I had always treated him well in the past, never harshly, yet this man proved so heartless, trapping me in such a dire situation, leaving me with no escape, neither to heaven nor to earth. Countless large hands reached out to grab me, the foul stench assaulting my senses. I closed my eyes in despair, my teeth pressing against the tip of my tongue. I, Shui Huan, would rather die than endure such humiliation. Suddenly, a young servant ran in from outside. Seeing the situation, he screamed in shock and stumbled backward in a panic. Instinctively, I opened my eyes and recognized the person as Pei Yuanyi's page boy, who was on very close terms with him. The bandits looked at each other, about to speak, when the paper covering the broken window suddenly tore open. An arrow shot through the remaining eye of the one-eyed bandit leader. Seeing this, the other bandits panicked and scattered like birds and beasts, fleeing outward, only to be picked off one by arrows. After everyone was dead, a man clad in black armor kicked open the broken door. "Is Miss Shui unharmed?" I was still shaken, my lips slightly parted, but when my gaze met the ghostly mask on the man's face, I fell silent. Who would have thought life's encounters could be so wondrous? "Speak of the devil, and he shall appear." Seeing that I remained silent, the man showed no annoyance. He simply removed his cloak and draped it over me, then picked me up and carried me straight outside. The gesture was truly presumptuous. I frowned in embarrassment and annoyance, saying, "General, is your behavior somewhat inappropriate?" The man stopped in his tracks and looked down at me. I saw clearly that beneath the mask, his bright eyes curved into a smile. "What does it matter? After all, I am your future husband." He emphasized the last few words heavily. Clearly having heard my earlier reckless remarks, my entire body felt as if it were on fire. Just as I struggled to get off the ground, the man's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly looked into the distance, following his gaze. I saw countless birds fluttering and taking flight, clearly indicating that a large group of people was rapidly approaching. As if aware of my confusion, the man spoke softly. "Pei Yuanyi is here, with the Imperial Guards. He wants to completely ruin your reputation. If you don't truly want to become his concubine, please hold on to me tightly." I was astonished that this military general possessed such a delicate and perceptive heart, but I didn't say much, simply burying myself in his chest. The cold armor trembled slightly, and the breathing above my head grew a bit unsteady. The man spoke, "Shui Huan, remember, My name is Qin Zhao. I didn't deceive you earlier. I am the eldest legitimate son of the Grand General's estate, and also, your future husband." Back at the mansion, my mind was restless, constantly echoing with the words the man spoke before he left. "Shui Huan. Tomorrow I will send someone with the betrothal gifts. Wait for me at home. I, Qin Zhao, am not some fickle scholar with no substance. I have no hidden agendas. Once I set my heart on someone, it will only be that person from then on." Pei Yuanyi came looking for me. I had never seen him in such a disheveled state. This man had always been meticulous about his appearance, dressing impeccably, but now his hair crown was askew, and stray strands of hair clung to his temples. "Ah Huan." Upon seeing me, Pei Yuanyi breathed a sigh of relief and repeatedly said, "It's good that you're fine, it's good that you're fine." I remembered the ruchuan pressed under the camphorwood chest in the room, along with the broken sash. The relief of surviving a disaster instantly turned into a cold indifference in my eyes. "Young Master Pei, you will soon be marrying my half-sister into your family. Please maintain more distance from me, your sister-in-law, to avoid making a spectacle of our two families." My words were both awkward and ruthless, leaving no room for compromise whatsoever. Pei Yuanyi took a few steps back, his face pale, but as if he had thought of something, his expression gradually softened. "Ah Huan, why must you be angry with me? I've heard about what happened to you. It was my negligence that nearly put you in danger. Fortunately, that general from the northern frontier passed by, preventing a disaster. One day, I will pay him a visit and properly thank him." Hearing this, my eyes flickered, and I looked at him with a hint of strangeness in my gaze. Pei Yuanyi remained completely unaware, continuing to speak on his own. "Regarding what happened today, just pretend it never occurred. I only acted this way because I cherish you too much and feared your pride might lead you astray. You can rest assured." He looked at me deeply, his eyes filled with affection, as if he had made some great resolution. "Once I marry Qingling into the family, I will definitely take you in as a co-wife." Pei Yuanyi left, brimming with confidence, as if he firmly believed that the position of a co-wife could erase all the recent humiliations he had inflicted upon me. Perhaps in his mind, I, Shui Huan, have always been a sparrow eager to climb the high branch. He only needs to use the prestige of his prime minister's household as bait to keep me hanging on. But, Pei Yuanyi, what you cannot give me, Qin Zhao can afford. Not only can a man provide, but in terms of current status he holds the rank of a 5th-grade lieutenant general, which is far superior to you, who merely bears the title of top scholar but holds no official position. Even if I were to climb the social ladder, I would never choose a heartless man like you. Chun Dao, go dig up the camphorwood chest under the locust tree in my courtyard, and then, burn it all. Inside that box are the memories of over a decade of childhood friendship between Pei Yuanyi and me. There are letters, sachets, lanterns, jade pendants, but now, I want none of it anymore. I, Shui Huan, if I love someone, will do so openly and generously, giving away everything I have. If I don't love someone, I can also break it off cleanly and ruthlessly. Qin Zhao is a man of his word. The very next day, the general's mansion sent over all 88 betrothal gifts. The scale was so grand that even after filling the front courtyard to capacity, there was still enough left over to spill into the backyard. Fortunately, with the man making such a statement, the father's intention to elevate Aunt Liu to the status of the main wife was once again put on hold. It is said that upon learning of this, Aunt Liu was so furious that she smashed all the porcelain in the courtyard. Shui Qingling was even kicked hard in the stomach by her. But what else could the woman do besides venting this pent-up anger? After all, standing behind me is a first-rank general and a third-rank commander. She, Shui Qingling, only has a first-rank prime minister to back her up. Moreover, the gates of the Pei family are not so easy to enter. I recalled Prime Minister Pei's fondness for beautiful concubines, and his flirtatious nature, as well as the ruthless methods of Madame Pei in punishing concubines, and a sudden chill ran down my spine. Actually, if it weren't for the fact that I once loved Pei Yuanyi so much, I really wouldn't want to get involved in the Pei family's mess. The waters there are too deep, and there are too many dirty dealings. But now it's fine, at least I don't have to step into that fire pit anymore. When Pei Yuanyi came again, I had just seen off the matchmaker from the Qin family. His face was dark, his brow bones prominent, and his expression was quite displeased. I turned a blind eye to this and was about to return to the mansion, but the man grabbed my wrist, his voice soaked in a frosty chill. Heroine, you really know how to stir up trouble. You've caused such a commotion all over the city. Aren't you afraid this drama will ruin your reputation? I turned around in astonishment. When have I ever stirred up trouble? Today, it was the general's mansion that sent someone to deliver the betrothal gifts. The commotion was quite loud, drawing everyone in the mansion to step outside. Pei Yuani turned a blind eye to this. Qingling has told me everything. You used the Pei family's betrothal gifts and added your own dowry to put on this grand show. Let me tell you, the husband is the master of the wife. You haven't even entered the doors of the Pei family yet, and you dare to coerce me like this. Once she really enters the mansion, won't it turn the whole place upside down? Heroine, I won't back down. I said you'll be a concubine, so you'll be a concubine. Don't put on airs. Everyone exchanged glances, looking at the mother and daughter with awkward expressions, their eyes filled with suspicion. Shui Qingling and Aunt Liu seemed to sense something. Lowering their heads in embarrassment, I gave them a cold glance but didn't expose them. I understand Pei Yuani, this man is arrogant and conceited. If he really finds out that I'm going to marry into the general's mansion instead of marrying him, who knows what kind of trouble he might stir up? Pei Yuani, seeing my silence, thought he had struck a chord in my heart. His sharp edges softened, and his tone eased a bit. Be good, I can turn a blind eye to your absurd actions today. Lately, you should rein in your heart and wait quietly at home. We have been childhood sweethearts for over a decade. I would never let you down. My gaze was cold, as if watching an actor on stage perform. The others also wore expressions of indescribable complexity. In the end, Shui Qingling couldn't bear it any longer and gently coaxed the man back to the Prime Minister's residence. Pei Yuani was quite pleased with this, and before leaving, he didn't forget to admonish me. Huan, you should learn more from your sister. If your temperament were even a third like hers, why would I have made you a concubine? Shui Qingling clenched her handkerchief tightly, her face turning deathly pale. I sneered, turned around and entered the mansion. Whether my act is real or fake, on the day when Shui Qingling and I get married together, the man will see the truth for himself. On the day when the sisters left the boudoir together, my sedan chair went first. The sedan chair swayed along the way, with countless candid dates and wedding candy scattered along the street. On Vermilion Bird Avenue, countless commoners lined the streets to watch. Children stood on tiptoe to offer congratulations. Women pointed at the bridal sedan and chatted with laughter, while elderly people murmured auspicious words under their breath. I glanced back at the sedan wall behind me, as if I could see through the red cloth and glimpse the mansion that had confined me for over a decade. Suddenly, I thought of my mother, the woman who held me tightly on her deathbed, desperately saying I'm sorry, and the woman who expressed regret that she wouldn't live to see me marry. Memories of the past were somewhat hazy, but I faintly recalled the scalding tears that fell on my skin. Chilling me to the bone, I turned back, momentarily lost in thought. So much time had already passed before I could dwell further on my sorrow. A startled exclamation suddenly came from outside the sedan. The voice was familiar. It was Pei Yuani. How dare someone else hold a wedding today? Who has the audacity to marry on the same day as the Prime Minister's residence? A servant cautiously replied, It's the General's residence, Master. Do you think the one inside might be? Before he could finish, Pei Yuani cut him off. Absolutely impossible. Heroine is far too proud to marry that good-for-nothing. I turned my head and glanced at the swaying curtain, faintly catching sight of the man's shifting expression. The sound of hoofbeats gradually faded into the distance. I withdrew my gaze, my heart utterly calm, instead feeling an endless sense of relief, as if a heavy stone that had long weighed on me had finally settled. Pei Yuani, from this day forward, you and I shall go our separate ways, each to our own marriage, never to be entangled again. Pei Yuani was panicking, his heart racing uncontrollably. After passing the bridal sedan, he had been tempted several times to turn his horse around and disregard propriety to see who was inside, but just yesterday, he had visited the general's residence and met that frivolous playboy, Qin Zhao. At the time, Qin Zhao had been extremely enthusiastic, sharing drinks with him and congratulating him on his upcoming wedding. After a few rounds of wine, the two had even addressed each other as brothers. Qin Zhao had also mentioned that his long-held wish was finally coming true. He would soon marry the girl he had been infatuated with since childhood. As he spoke, the playboy's eyes were sincere, and he toasted Pei Yuanyi several more times, calling him a man of great fortune. At the time, Pei Yuanyi had been too intoxicated to think much of it, but who could have imagined that this playboy would marry on the same day as him? Pei Yuanyi felt uneasy, as if he had overlooked something that day. He glanced uncertainly at the page who had accompanied him for years. Liu Feng, do you think Qin Zhao and Xue Huan are familiar with each other? Liu Feng shook his head. Master, you must be joking. The two of them have barely met a few times. How could they be considered familiar? Pei Yuanyi felt slightly reassured. Indeed, what connection could Qin Zhao and Xue Huan possibly have? Surely no one could have fallen in love at first sight as a child and remained infatuated all these years. If such a devoted man truly existed in this world, it would be truly bizarre. The wedding ceremony proceeded in a daze. Pei Yuanyi and Xue Qingling had already completed the husband and wife bowing to each other, leaving only the final step of being escorted to the bridal chamber. Just then, he overheard a former classmate from the Imperial Academy whispering, "It seems Brother Pei has lost that bet. He only took the younger sister but lost the elder sister. Miss Xue, the eldest daughter, has likely already stepped over the fire basin and entered the gates of the general's mansion by now." A thunderous shock seemed to explode in his mind. This man, who had always prided himself on his composure, could no longer maintain his poise. Under the astonished gazes of all the guests, Pei Yuanyi abandoned the pale-faced Xue Qingling, rushed over to the scholar, and dug his nails deeply into the other's flesh. "What do you mean? Miss Xue has entered the general's mansion." The man winced in pain but dared not offend Pei Yuanyi. Forcing a flattering expression as he explained, "Brother Pei, don't you know today, the Xue sisters, they are both getting married on the same day." Pei Yuanyi's eyes widened in shock. He whirled around to look at the unsteady Xue Qingling and cried out, "Qingling, tell me quickly, what he said is false. Hurry." Xue Qingling stammered for a long while before finally bursting into tears, her face streaked with sorrow. "Pei Lang, I tried to persuade my elder sister, but she was determined to do this." Pei Yuanyi staggered, clutching his chest as he gasped for breath. "So, what he said is true?" Xue Qingling stepped forward, taking his hand with a pitiful, heart-wrenching look in her eyes. "Pei Lang, let's discuss this another day. We should first go to the bridal chamber." This act of feigned weakness had always worked on Pei Yuanyi in the past, but this time, the man roughly pushed the startled woman away. "Xue Qingling, you vile woman, how dare you deceive me into thinking your elder sister was still unmarried?" Pei Yuanyi tore off his black gauze cap and hurled it violently to the ground, turning away without a backward glance. "Today's wedding between us is hereby annulled." The hall erupted in an uproar. The guests were all shrewd individuals and naturally sensed something amiss. In an instant, all their scornful gazes nearly drowned the Xue mother and daughter. Madame Liu and Xue Qingling collapsed weakly to the floor, their faces ashen. After this farce, Madame Liu's ambitions to become the legitimate wife were likely completely dashed, and even Xue Qingling would have no choice but to shave her head, become a nun, and spend her days in solitude with the ancient Buddha. Just as Qin Zhao and I were in the midst of the husband and wife bowing to each other, a commotion erupted outside the door. Pei Yuanyi barged in, his clothes disheveled. The moment he saw Qin Zhao, he began shouting, "You black-hearted scoundrel, don't you know how deep my affection for a WN is? And yet you actually snatched away what belongs to another. Simply inhuman." My gaze darkened slightly, my breathing growing a bit unsteady. "Pei Yuanyi's actions today are practically ruining my reputation. He almost pointed his finger at my nose, accusing me of having a secret affair with him. He's trying to drive me to my death." I was about to make a move, but Qin Zhao held me back, giving me a reassuring look. The man drew his long blade and walked step by step toward Pei Yuanyi. Pei Yuanyi was also a stubborn one, sticking his neck out and saying, "Qin Zhao, This wedding of yours today will not happen." Qin Zhao laughed and swung his blade to strike. Pei Yuani had not expected him to actually dare to strike, and in the moment of panic, stumbled and fell to the ground. The blade stopped an inch from the tip of his nose, then was lifted and thrown back into its sheath. "Pei Yuani, you yourself wanted both this and that, but ended up outsmarting yourself. Who can you blame? You forced Shuejijio to elevate your concubine to the status of a legitimate wife, trying to tarnish my mother-in-law's reputation after her death, and you arbitrarily cut off a Huan's path to officialdom, rendering her over a decade of hard work in vain. You have repeatedly humiliated our Huan, never once holding her in regard. Now you put on such an act of sincerity. Who are you trying to fool?" Pei Yuani's lips trembled as he looked at me, his eyes filled with pleading. Huan, I was wrong. Remember the bond we shared as childhood friends for over a decade. Please come back to the Pei residence with me. I will treasure you like the apple of my eye." My expression was cold and detached as I sneered. "What bond remains between you and me? From the moment you relentlessly pressured me, nearly driving me to my death, we were already settled." Pei Yuani's face turned completely ashen. He still wanted to say something, but a group of imperial guards in flying fish uniforms suddenly burst in. The Prime Minister colluded with the regent to obstruct the new learning, formed cliques for personal gain, and conspired with the old learning faction to seize power and usurp the throne. Truly heinous crimes. His Majesty, in his benevolence, cannot bear to shed blood. All those involved are to be exiled to Lingnan. The journey is long and fraught with miasma. Whether you survive will depend on your fate. Pei Yuani's eyes widened in fury. He tried to stand and flee, but several burly men pinned him to the ground and shackled him. In just one night, this former favored son of heaven fell from grace, reduced to a disgraced official. I sighed on my face, and Qin Zhao took my hand, his voice gentle. "Let's go to the bridal chamber." My face flushed with embarrassment, but I didn't struggle, letting him lead me inside. Behind me, agonizing cries continued as Pei Yuani desperately reached out toward me, tears and mucus streaming down his face. I walked on the bright red carpet without looking back. With this parting, and Pei Yuani are likely separated by life and death, never to meet again. As for my father, I have long since secretly given him a medicine that will leave him without heirs, Heshamed all his life, and in the end, everything will serve as a dowry for my future child. Passing through the moon gate, I looked up at the sky. Today, the spring light is just right, and magpies perch on the branches. The first story ends here. Don't go away, the next story is even more exciting. I saved a man who was severely injured after he woke up. He said, "Thank you, miss, for saving my life. Unfortunately, I am already married." Wait, why isn't this playing out like it does in the storybooks? Who would have thought he would suddenly change his tone? "I have no way to repay your life-saving grace, so I am willing to give you 10,000 taels of gold." While the man was recuperating from his injuries, he heard about my former fiancé breaking off the engagement after high school and angrily threw a book in front of me. "You, study hard, take the imperial examination next year, enter the officialdom, and crush that ungrateful scoundrel. How can a woman take the imperial examination? I say you can. So you can. Go study." Later, I caught a glimpse of the Emperor's face in the Golden One Hall and was suddenly stunned. The rescued man remained unconscious for a full day and night before waking up. His handsome face was filled with vigilance, and I whispered softly, "I found you by the river, sir. May I ask your name, where you live, and what misfortune befell you that led you to end up here?" After a long while, he finally spoke hoarsely, "I am Chengyu. Unfortunately robbed by bandits and separated from my family and attendants, I am fortunate to have been rescued by you, miss." Seeing his extraordinary appearance, my thoughts grew more active. "May I ask how many people are in your family?" "Sir, I have a wife and a young son at home." "You're married." I suddenly stood up. Why isn't this playing out as the script says? When I picked up Chengyu, I originally didn't want to get involved. If he were a good person, that would be fine. But if he were a deranged villain, wouldn't I just be asking for trouble? Most importantly, I'm poor. This man is covered in wounds. Who knows how much silver it will take to heal him? But in the end, my conscience got the better of me, and I carried him back after tending to his wounds, I realized this man was even more handsome than the son-in-law of the Lee family in town. His tough. I grabbed some medicine and forced it down his throat. After a day and a night, he woke up according to the storybooks. These fallen noblemen should fall in love at first sight with their saviors, but the storybooks didn't mention what to do when you pick up a man who already has a wife. Before my father passed away, he held my hand and warned me that his daughter must never become a concubine. Forget it, let's just consider it a good deed I've done. I was lost in my own thoughts until I heard the man on the bed say, "Miss, I have no way to repay your life-saving kindness. My family is fairly wealthy, and once my attendants find me, I am willing to offer you 10,000 taels of gold as a reward." What did you say? I doubted my own ears for a moment. The man before me coughed twice. I wish to offer 10,000 taels of gold as a reward, and I beg you to take me in for a while. Gold, 10,000 taels. I was stunned by these words. Cheng Yu handed over a ring of exceptional quality. This is something I carry with me, and its quality is quite good. You can take it to the pawn shop. The ring in my hand suddenly felt scalding. Although I am no expert, I could still tell that this item was of great value. The man before me instantly transformed from a burden into a god of wealth. I said devoutly, "Rest assured, young master, I will take good care of you." The man was frail and had a picky appetite. After eating some rice porridge, he fell into a deep sleep again. I took the ring he gave me to the pawn shop, exchanged it for money, and hired a doctor for him. With a man suddenly appearing in my home, even though I claimed he was a cousin who had come to visit, rumors still spread throughout the village. After my father passed away, I was the only one left in the family. Now that there's a man here, it damages my reputation, but compared to money, what does a little reputation matter? Too, the man I brought home has a strong constitution, and after a few days of rest, he was able to get up that day. The matchmaker came again. "Miss Lin, I'm not saying this lightly, but with your father gone, you need to find someone to rely on. Master Zhong may be a bit older, but you'd be his second wife, the legitimate mistress. Master Zhong admires your father for being a scholar, which is why he's willing to marry you. Otherwise, with your reputation of being jilted, could you find a better match?" I sneered coldly. "If you think it's such a good match, why don't you marry your own daughter to him?" The matchmaker's voice grew shrill. "How can you say that? I'm only doing this for your own good. With a reputation like yours, what ordinary family would be willing to marry you? You may have a pretty face, but you're too proud to be a concubine. If you miss this chance with Master Zhong, it'll be hard to marry into a wealthy family later on. You can't use Yi Shichen as a benchmark. Yes, he was your fiancé in the past, but now he's a top scholar with a bright future. There are plenty of noble ladies who want to marry him. How could you possibly aspire to that?" Aspire, that word sounded utterly mocking to my ears. The matchmaker was still praising the virtues of Master Zhong in my ear, making my head ache until another male voice sounded. "How old is this Master Zhong?" The matchmaker was startled. "When did a man appear in your house?" Cheng Yu repeated the question he had just asked. "Master Zhong is 56 this year, still in his prime." Cheng Yu twitched the corner of his mouth. Half his body is already in the coffin, yet he still has his eyes on young girls. The old fool. After spending a few days together, this was the first time I truly grasped how sharp-tongued Cheng Yu could be. "How dare you speak like that? Young man, who are you?" the matchmaker said, then turned to look at me. "Miss Lin, I thought since your father is a scholar, you would have some manners. How dare you hide a man in your home?" "I am Lin Xiaohua's cousin." Cheng Yu spoke up. "I am rejecting this marriage proposal on her behalf. From now on, you need not concern yourself with her marriage matters." The matchmaker was furious. "Fine. Let's see who dares to come knocking on your door again, you ungrateful little wretch. Let's see what kind of respectable family you'll marry into." The matchmaker stormed out, slamming the door behind her. There were quite a few onlookers around, and their whispers drifted into my ears. Scholar Lin taught quite a few students in his lifetime. Now that he's dead, is there really not a single one willing to marry his daughter? Who would dare to marry her? If Lin Zhaohua were a decent person, why would Scholar Yi break off the engagement? Perhaps she did something shameful, and that's why he called it off. That's true. Suddenly, a cousin appears out of nowhere. Who knows if he's a lover or Something else, I closed the door, but it didn't completely block out the voices outside. Brother Cheng, you don't have to pay attention to what they say. My original intention was to appease the god of wealth, however. Cheng Yu suddenly asked about another person, your former fiancé. Is he Yi Shichen? The Tanhua Lang personally selected by the emperor in last year's palace examination. I nodded, not understanding why. After he achieved success in the imperial examination, he broke off the engagement with you. I hesitated for a moment. Actually, not entirely. When he first returned home in glory, he asked me if I was willing to change from wife to concubine. My father was seriously ill at the time, but he forced himself to get up and kicked him out, declaring that he was severing the teacher-student relationship with such an ungrateful scoundrel. Ungrateful? I don't know why, but Cheng Yu's tone made me particularly eager to confide since my father passed away. Some things had been weighing on my heart for too long, so I poured out everything to this man I had just met by chance. To say Yi Shichen is ungrateful is absolutely correct. My father was an old scholar, lacking the luck for an official career, and finally accepted his fate after repeated attempts at the imperial examinations. He ran a private school in the village. Yi Shichen's family was poor, the kind that struggled to even meet basic needs for food and clothing. When he reached the age for schooling, he would eagerly press his face against the window, listening to my father's lectures. Finally, my father took him on as a student, charging no tuition and even providing him with writing materials. Seeing that our family had only a daughter, the Yi family later proposed a marriage alliance, likely hoping that even if Yi Shichen failed the imperial exams, he could still inherit my father's legacy. My father, wishing for me to have support, agreed. From then on, he treated Yi Shichen as a son, often providing him with financial assistance. Even the travel expenses for Yi Shichen to go to the capital for the imperial examination were provided by my family. Who would have thought that once he passed the exam with flying colors, he would turn his back and deny everything? The Yi family, relying on their son's success as the third-place scholar, spread rumors about me everywhere, claiming I was unworthy of their accomplished son. I wiped the tears from my face, growing more and more heartbroken as I thought about it. How could heaven be so blind as to let such a scoundrel become the third-place scholar? Before my father passed away, he still said he was sorry for me, for choosing such a fiancé. If it weren't for that ungrateful scoundrel, how could my father have died of depression? How outrageous. Cheng Yu suddenly slammed the table with force. I was stunned for a moment. Cheng Yu's anger was even greater than expected. Besides sympathizing with my plight, there seemed to be another reason mixed in, a feeling of indignation. As if having been deceived, Cheng Yu stood up, pulled 2 books from my father's belongings, and slapped them in front of me. He had been reading them frequently during his recovery these past few days. You, study hard, take the imperial examination next year, enter the officialdom, and crush that ungrateful scoundrel. I was dumbfounded. How can a woman take the imperial examination? I say I can, so I can go study. I actually have read the 4 books and 5 classics back then. My father really wanted a son. He was a scholar, one who aspired to be an official. Since he didn't have the ability himself, he pinned his hopes on the next generation. But my mother was frail and only gave birth to me. My father was pedantic and contradictory. On one hand, he wanted a son, but on the other, he couldn't bear to see my mother suffer through childbirth again. He would grumble about me being just a girl, yet he taught me to read and understand principles. Later, he finally reconciled himself, thinking that nurturing a son-in-law would be just as good. Little did he know that Yi Shichen, that ungrateful wretch, completely forgot the fundamental principles of being a decent person that my father had taught him. Cheng Yu, having nothing better to do, took a book and tested my knowledge. After I answered each question one by one, I saw a complex expression on Cheng Yu's face. After a long while, I heard him sneer and comment, "Your level of learning is far higher than that so-called top scholar." I was amused. "You've never met Yi Shichen, so how do you know my knowledge surpasses his?" Cheng Yu snorted coldly and fell silent. He had been recuperating here for half a month, yet his attendants had not come looking for him. Instead, Another piece of news began to spread among the common people. The current emperor was gravely ill and had not attended court for a long time. Rumors among the people suggested that His Majesty was nearing the end of his life, and with the crown prince still young, the empress was now overseeing state affairs. It seemed the country was on the verge of turmoil. The affairs of the court are far removed from us common folk. Besides, we are a long way from the capital here. Yet, after hearing these words, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emotion. The empress is truly blessed with good fortune. Good fortune. The man behind me suddenly spoke up. That's right. I heard His Majesty hasn't taken any concubines and only has the crown prince as his child, so the throne is undoubtedly the crown prince's. There's a saying among the common folk, promotion, wealth and a dead wife. I lowered my voice a bit, to speak with great disrespect. If His Majesty were to pass away, Her Majesty the Empress would become the Empress Dowager. With the crown prince being young, wouldn't both the court and the inner palace be under her control? I can't even imagine how wonderful that life would be. Lost in my admiration and envy, I didn't notice the man I had worked so hard to save giving me a cold smile. It seems you dare to imagine quite a bit. I chuckled. You flatter me too much. A gust of wind blew by, and I shrank my neck, muttering softly, where did this eerie wind come from? Cheng Yu left me with double the usual amount of homework that day. Ever since he confidently declared that women would be allowed to take the provincial exams next year, he had been supervising my studies just like my father used to supervise his students back in the day. Whenever I raised an objection, he would look at me with a gaze that seemed to say I didn't know what was good for me. Brother Cheng, with your great knowledge, why don't you take the imperial exams and become an official in the court? I asked. If being an official were the only proper path in this world, and everyone pursued officialdom, with no one farming or engaging in commerce, wouldn't that lead to chaos? Being an official isn't something you can just become if you want to. Then why do you always urge me to become an official? Cheng Yu glanced at me and said, there has never been a precedent for a woman to take the imperial examinations and become an official. If you were the first woman to set foot in the court and achieve political success, you would surely leave your name in history. Don't you want that? How strange at this moment. Cheng Yu's words were like freshly baked pancakes from the street. They smelled sweet and stirred my heart with excitement. But this teacher of his is far too strict. In the past, I hoped his family would find him quickly for the promised 10,000 taels of gold. Now, I only wish they would hurry and take this great Buddha away. My own father was never this strict back in the day. Time flew by, and before I knew it, Cheng Yu had been staying at my house for over a month. With most of his injuries healed, however, the gossip in the village only grew more intense until that day, when the Yi family dragged the village chief and a group of villagers to my doorstep, shouting loudly, "Village chief, you must see this. What is this man of unknown origin that Lin Jiaohua has brought home? This is nothing but illicit cohabitation without a matchmaker." I stepped outside and saw Yi Shuchen's mother standing with her hands on her hips, pointing at me and saying, "Lin Jiaohua, it's a shame your father was a scholar. How could he raise such a shameless daughter? Thankfully, my son Chen has already broken off the engagement with you. Otherwise, bringing you into our family would only invite ridicule." I narrowed my eyes and looked at the crowd gathered at my doorstep, then fixed my gaze on the village chief. "Lin girl, tell me, what exactly is your relationship with the man in the house? Your father has only been gone for a year. Don't tarnish his reputation." "Village chief, he is my distant cousin. He was injured and is staying here temporarily. There is nothing improper between us." Yi Shuchen's father spat in disgust. "You say there's nothing improper, but who would believe that? What decent girl takes in an unrelated man? If word gets out, people might think all the girls in our apricot blossom village are shameless. How will the unmarried girls ever find husbands? In my opinion, such shameless, immoral scoundrels should be drowned in a pig cage." Drowned in a pig cage. The Yi family's calculations are truly ruthless. Seeing their son's promising future, they feared I couldn't swallow my anger and might one day cause trouble for Yi Shuchen, so they decided to go all the way and have me killed, eliminating the hidden danger once and for all. I curled my lips slightly and glanced at the crowd gathered at my doorstep. Among them, Many had even received favors from my parents now. To please the Tanhua scholar, they want me dead. Aunt Wu, whose child once fell ill and sought help from my father, receiving medical expenses to save her son, now echoes the Yi family, saying I have disgraced our family's reputation. Chang Geng, who, despite his family's poverty, was able to study at my father's private school and now works as an accountant in town, remains silent in the crowd, his eyes flickering. He wasn't originally named Chang Geng, he was called Deng Go, but my father gave him a new name. The village chief also said in a deep voice, "Girl Lin, how can you face your deceased parents like this? It would be better to go cleanly." Suddenly, someone spoke up from behind, "Can a mere village chief treat human life as worthless? Since His Majesty ascended the throne, he has issued orders prohibiting private courts and the use of private punishment. Are you all trying to rebel?" I turned around and said, "Didn't I tell you to stay in the room? What are you doing out here?" Cheng Yu sneered, "They're about to throw me into the pig cage." How could I miss such a spectacle? You could really hear a sense of novelty in his tone. What a mess. Someone in the crowd laughed carelessly. The mountains are high, and the emperor is far away. How could such an ugly affair ever reach His Majesty's ears? For some reason, Cheng Yu let out another cold laugh upon hearing this. Why waste words with them? Just tie up this little harlot and her lover, and see if they still talk tough after being dunked in the water. Yi Shuchen's mother said viciously, seeing everyone still hesitating. She added, "My son will soon marry the daughter of the Minister of Rights. By then, will we still fear this wretched girl, eh?" Phoenix rising from a poor, remote village. Everyone wants to curry favor. Seeing that they were serious, I turned to push Cheng Yu away. "Brother Cheng, run out the back door quickly. They're only targeting me." "You," Cheng Yu interrupted me, placing his index finger on his lips and making a sh sound. The gate of my courtyard couldn't possibly hold back so many people. With a loud bang, the courtyard gate was forced open, and a crowd surged in, their faces twisted like demons, each harboring their own sinister intentions. In such a situation, the person beside me still managed to maintain a calm and fearless demeanor, as if he didn't even take these people seriously. I really wanted to curse him out and ask if he had lost his mind. The Yi family members charged ahead, their mouths spewing foul language. I stood in front of Cheng Yu, casually picking up the hoe, leaning against the wall, facing overwhelming numbers. They naturally had no fear of just the two of us. Just as they were about to close in, a sudden change occurred. Cheng Yu snapped his fingers behind me without warning. A group of black-clad figures wielding sharp swords leaped down from the roof. In an instant, the situation shifted. The villagers found swords pressed against their necks, their legs giving way as they knelt to the ground, pleading for mercy. I could clearly see the chilling cold gleam on those blades. The leader of the men in black knelt on one knee before me, clasping his fists. "Your subordinate is late. I beg for your forgiveness, master." After a moment of stunned silence, I turned to look at Cheng Yu and stammered, "Why, your family is here." Cheng Yu gave a faint in response, and that aura of looking down upon all living beings returned. My legs went weak for a moment. "Cheng Yu, what's wrong with you?" I forced a laugh. "You never mentioned that your family members wield swords and knives. That's a bit scary, bro." Inside the room, I stared wide-eyed at the boxes of gold on the floor. I picked up a piece, took a bite, and a wave of happiness washed over me. Are all of these really for me? I looked toward Cheng Yu, who was seated. He gave me a disdainful look but still nodded in agreement. I chuckled. "Actually, you could give me less." Suddenly having so much money, I don't even know how to spend it. But Cheng Yu said, "You deserve it. My life is still quite valuable." I can see that. My eyes are filled with gold. After the confusion, I finally remembered the important matter. "Are you leaving?" Cheng Yu nodded. Indeed, the time he spent recovering at my place was like a noble young master in distress. "I've prepared a study schedule for you," Cheng Yu suddenly said. "Even when I'm not here, you still need to study hard." I really couldn't help it and rolled my eyes. "You're about to leave and you're still worrying about my studies. Even my father never kept such a close eye on me before. Besides, even the emperor wouldn't dare to say that women can take the imperial exams. Where on earth did you get this little piece of news?" Cheng Yu didn't explain. His departure wasn't particularly noticeable. The villagers were terrified that day. When Cheng Yu's attendants held knives to their necks, it truly seemed as if their lives were at stake. I nervously spoke up. "You're not going to kill them, are you?" Cheng Yu replied. "Are you pleading for them?" I rubbed my hands together. "No, murder is against the law. I'm just worried that you might end up in prison right after returning home. I wonder if his family has the ability to get him out of prison." "I certainly don't have that capability," Cheng Yu sneered coldly. He turned and sent those who were shouting to drown me and him in a pig cage to the authorities, leaving behind an ambiguous remark. "What they've done is enough to cost them 10 heads. Those people did end up going to the government office, and they came back in one piece, but it looks like they suffered quite a bit." Not long after Cheng Yu left, I moved away too. Back when my family was poor, it was one thing. But now that I've suddenly become wealthy, I naturally won't continue living a hard life. I moved to the town, bought a house, hired some help, and started living a life where I didn't have to lift a finger. More than a month of such good days passed, and I completely forgot about Cheng Yu's parting advice. Women taking the imperial examination is shocking and unconventional. All the civil and military officials in the court are men. Would they agree to it? I didn't take this matter seriously until the news from the capital reached my small town. I had previously heard that the critically ill emperor had actually recovered and had issued several new laws, one of which was establishing schools for women and allowing women to take the imperial examinations. The whole world was shocked. I was stunned for a long time. Could what Cheng Yu said actually be true? His Majesty has truly decreed that women are allowed to serve as officials in the court. The scholars in the town argue endlessly every day, with the core topics being nothing more than women are short-sighted. How can they enter the court? And women are naturally meant to manage the household and raise children. Could it be that they will attend court with a pregnant belly in the future? I was lost in thought for 2 days. In the end, I suddenly pulled out those books that had been gathering dust for over a month and, under the astonished gaze of my maid, declared, "I will take the imperial examination next year. I have seriously thought about my future. I am now considered wealthy, and later on, I could marry a man with my fortune or take in a son-in-law to live a comfortable life. But whenever I think this way, a strange feeling wells up in my heart." Cheng Yu once asked me, "You have studied poetry and literature for many years. But just because you are a woman, there is a world of difference between you and the men who can take the imperial examinations. Are you content with that?" "Of course, I am not content in this world. If a woman wants to climb higher, she must either pray that her father and brothers hold high positions and generous salaries, or marry a man who can rise in the world. Even in the latter case, she must gamble on a man's conscience. But what if a woman could also climb higher on her own?" All the grievances she endured when Yi Shichen broke off their engagement became her motivation at this moment. After policies are issued, it takes time for them to be implemented. A women's academy has been established in the town, but it has very few students. Most families still consider it shameful for women to appear in public, so only the poor, attracted by the subsidies offered by the academy, have enrolled. Teaching these women to read is not easy. They must first be introduced to literacy and learn to recognize characters, and most people here did not come to become officials. They did it to supplement their family's income, to learn to read and write, so that they could be worthy of better husbands in the future. The beginning is always the hardest, and that's probably how it is. This year passed with single-minded focus. The mockery and ridicule around me never ceased, but I took the county and provincial exams like a man and became a provincial scholar. Then I set off for the capital, a place I once thought I would never set foot in my entire life. Thanks to the money Cheng Yu left behind, over the past year, I used it to open several shops and even made a decent profit. The capital is bustling, and I generously bought a house. Money truly is a wonderful thing. After settling in, I went out with my maid, Inxing, to buy some things. She was still young and extremely lively. "Sister Hua, can I be considered a book companion accompanying a scholar to the capital for the imperial exams now?" I smiled and said, "Of course you can. If you study hard, in a couple of years, I'll let you take the imperial exams too." "Sister Hua, I haven't even learned all the characters yet. How could I possibly take the imperial examination?" But that didn't stop her from feeling very happy after hearing it. Yinxing was someone I bought. At the time, her gambling-addicted father wanted to sell her to a brothel for more silver. I intercepted the deal, and she became my maid. Over the past year, she has grown taller and stronger, but she just doesn't like studying later. I discovered she loved reading storybooks, so I bought some for her, and that's how she learned to recognize more characters, teach according to the student's aptitude. What my father said was the wisdom of our ancestors. Before coming to the capital, I went to pay respects at my parents' graves. I suppose my father never imagined that his daughter would one day have such a fate. I wonder if he were still alive, whether he would find it absurd or be proud of me. But most of what I learned was indeed taught by my father, and some by Chengyu. To this day, I still don't know who he is. That he could have known the content of the new laws so early. Although I once saved Chengyu's life, if we were to meet again, I think I should bow to him in gratitude. I took the ginkgo into a jewelry shop. Inside, a man and a woman were browsing. Qianqian, this pomegranate red gemstone hairpin matches your temperament perfectly. It's truly elegant. A familiar male voice suddenly rang out. Following the sound, Yi Shichuan's face came into view. He was holding a hairpin, speaking intimately with a woman. What a small world. I had only been in the capital for a few days, yet I had already encountered this ill-fated thing. Ginkgo was quite lively, calling me over to look at the jewelry. Yi Shichuan and the woman casually glanced over as well, and my gaze met his directly. His expression instantly turned unpleasant upon seeing my face. Lin Zhaohua, what are you doing in the capital? The reunion came earlier than expected. Yi Shichuan frowned, looking at me as if I were a piece of sticky gum he couldn't shake off. It's been 3 years since I last saw him. Yi Shichuan looks even more spirited than the year he achieved the 3rd highest rank in the imperial examinations during high school. His attire appears much more luxurious now, and he is accompanied by maids and servants. I heard he was appointed as a compiler in the Hanlin Academy back then. 3 years have passed, and I wonder if he has been promoted. Yinxing doesn't recognize Yi Shichuan and looks at him and me with confusion. I rolled my eyes inwardly and ignored this person, yet Yi Shichuan had no sense of propriety and spoke again. Lin Zhaohua, the woman beside him, asked upon hearing this. Aiken, who is this young lady? A flicker of panic crossed Yi Shichuan's face as he hurriedly replied, Qianqian, she's from my hometown. The woman wore her hair in a married woman's style and was behaving intimately with Yi Shichuan, making their relationship quite clear without a word. I curled my lips into a smile. Yes, I am from the same hometown as Lord Yi, so it turns out you've gotten married. My lady, you are truly beautiful. May I ask which noble family you come from? The maid beside the woman replied with pride. Our lady is the daughter of the Minister of Rights. Is that so? I drew out the end of my sentence, then looked at Yi Shichuan with a teasing glint in my eyes. It seems Lord Yi has been doing quite well in the capital. In that case, shouldn't you repay the travel expenses you borrowed from my family when you went to the capital for the imperial examination all those years ago? As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings fell silent for a moment. Yi Shichuan's expression grew even more unpleasant. His wife was stunned and looked up at him. When did I ever? Yi Shichuan instinctively wanted to retort, but then he abruptly fell silent. He is afraid that I would reveal my identity, afraid that I would speak of his breaking off the engagement after high school, his official position, his wealthy wife, his father-in-law's regard. These are all things he cannot bear to lose. Besides, what I said wasn't wrong. I gave him travel expenses back then because he was my fiancé, but he was ungrateful. Why should I indulge him? The Yi family has no shame and would never return the money my family spent on Yi Shichuan over the years. But Yi Shichuan is different. He cares about his reputation and his good name. After a long while, Yi Shichuan forced a smile. I forgot. Does Zhaohua's sister remember the amount? I smiled brightly. 20 taels of silver. Back then, the travel expenses I gave him were 15 taels of silver, but after all these years of support, asking for only 20 taels is letting him off easy. Yi Shichuan took out the money without hesitation. He really has made it big. He gritted his teeth slightly. How did Sister Zhaohua come to the capital? It's been 3 years since we last met. Did you come with your husband? 3 years ago, I was 16 now, I am 19, it is the age to be married. I took the money and smiled at him. No need for Lord Yi to worry about that. Yi Shichen, feeling guilty like a thief, hurriedly paid the bill and left with his wife holding the 20 taels of silver. I didn't feel particularly pleased. My father wouldn't be coming back either. Footsteps suddenly came from upstairs. I looked up and saw a blue robe first, then a face more handsome than Panan. I used to think Yi Shichen was good-looking, but after meeting Cheng Yu, I felt Yi Shichen was just an ordinary man. But after 2 years apart, I had somewhat forgotten Cheng Yu's face. Now, this gentleman coming downstairs is the most handsome person I have ever seen. His gaze also fell upon me, sizing me up for a moment before he suddenly said, "A female scholar heading to the capital for the imperial examination." I was stunned. How could he tell? The other person smiled. "Don't be afraid, miss. It has only been 2 years since His Majesty allowed women to take the imperial examination. This is the first time women have participated in the imperial exams. There are already few women who are well versed in the 4 books and 5 classics, and after the rigorous selection process at various towns and villages, the number of women who can participate in the metropolitan examination is fewer than the fingers on both hands. You have the air of a scholar, so I took a bold guess. It seems I guessed correctly." He looked at me with a curious gaze. "My imperial elder brother said that women are no less capable of reading than men, and I believe it. I never liked studying since I was young, but I enjoy spending time with scholars. My sister-in-law is very well read." The person before me wasn't looking for trouble. After a few words, he added, "Then I wish you success in the imperial examination in advance." This encounter wasn't particularly memorable, except for the fact that the lively young gentleman was truly handsome. Are all the people in the capital this good-looking? I didn't have time to wander around the capital, so I buried myself in my studies. Yi Shichen, still uneasy, found out the purpose of my visit to the capital. When he learned that I was one of the female candidates preparing for the imperial examination, his disdain was palpable. "Lin Jiaohua, do you think the imperial examination is easy? The emperor allowing women to take the exam doesn't mean women can actually pass. You're being far too unrealistic." I only replied with one sentence. "What, are you afraid I'll stay in the capital and become your colleague? Not only do I want to become an official, but I also want to be a higher-ranking one than him." In the blink of an eye, the day of the metropolitan examination arrived. Men and women take the exam separately, but in the end, the papers are mixed together. In other words, we are competing with men, and in the end, there might not be a single woman who can become a tribute scholar. It was only then that I realized the young master I had met only once was right. There were indeed fewer than 10 women participating in the imperial examination, only 9 in total. Moreover, they all appeared to be either wealthy or of noble status. The imperial examination was so long and tedious that it was unbearable. At one point, a young woman fainted midway through. Just as the proctor was about to send her for medical treatment, she gritted her teeth and got back up. These young women were all youthful, at least younger than me. After the lengthy examination ended, I walked out with unsteady steps. Ginkgo had been waiting outside for quite some time. "Sister Hua, how did you do on the exam?" I shook my head. "I've done my best. The rest is up to fate." On the way, I encountered a male scholar coming from another direction. When he saw us, he actually turned his face away and snorted coldly. He looked down on us with disdain. I could tolerate it, but a girl passing by sneered, "Who is this fool?" Later I learned that among the 9 women who took the imperial examination, 7 were daughters of officials. Those male scholars without power or influence actually couldn't afford to offend them either. The waiting process was also agonizing. Even though I now have no shortage of money, this was the moment that would determine my fate. I waited and waited, and finally, the day of the results announcement arrived. Ginkgo went to wait early. The street was bustling with activity, and wealthy merchants were already waiting to catch a son-in-law under the announcement board. Amid all the noise, I heard Ginkgo's cheerful voice approaching from afar. "You passed, Hua Jie, you passed." The words fell on my ears, feeling somewhat unreal. It truly feels like a dream, a beautiful dream. So this is the wonderful taste of being in the spring breeze of success. Among the 9 women, 3 are tribute scholars. I was among the top performers alongside a girl named Hichio. I later learned that she was the girl who had fainted during the exam. The granddaughter of the grand tutor. On the day of the palace examination, I felt inexplicably nervous. This was the day to meet the emperor 2 years ago. I never imagined that one day I would stand in the Golden Swan Hall to meet the emperor, not because I was someone's wife, daughter, or sister, but because I was Lin Zhaohua in the Golden Swan Hall. I lowered my head like everyone else, performing the ritual kowtow with proper decorum. Long live the emperor, may you live 10,000 years. Rise. The voice from above carried a strangely familiar tone. The emperor is still young, and his voice sounds youthful as well. The next moment, I heard a voice ring out from above once more. All of you, lift your heads and let me see you. Upon hearing this, I raised my head, and my gaze inadvertently fell upon the dragon throne. I was able to catch a glimpse of the imperial countenance, but at the moment I saw clearly, I suddenly froze. Not only was the voice familiar, but even the face looked familiar. The man I had once taken home to recover from his injuries was now sitting on the dragon throne. He is the emperor. With the palace examination approaching, I had no time to dwell on my chaotic emotions and focused on writing my policy essay. I remember Cheng Yu. During the time His Majesty was recovering from his injuries, he would often ask questions related to the people's livelihood. After I gave dry, uninspired answers, he would frown. The imperial examinations don't select people who only know how to study rigidly. If you don't understand these matters, go and observe, find the answers from the common people. Over the past 2 years, I've paid attention to this. Once I truly focused, I realized that being an official wasn't as simple as I had thought in the past. The words on the paper grew in number, and I could feel the gazes directed at me from all around. This was the first time a woman had ever appeared in the palace examination. It was bound to draw attention. The palace examination had concluded, and it had similarly drained most of my energy. Zhaohua, someone called out to me from behind. I turned around and realized it was Hichio. Miss He. Hichio clasped her hands together and said to me, I heard you're not from the capital. My family is hosting a banquet tomorrow, and I'd like to invite you to be our guest. Would you be willing? Zhaohua. Logically speaking, after the imperial examination results were announced, gatherings for scholars would follow one after another. However, even though women are now allowed to take the imperial examinations, they are still excluded by men, and those gatherings would not invite us. I smiled gently and said, then I shall accept your kind invitation. As I passed by those men, they were discussing the topics for the palace examination and speculating on who would be the top scholar. I overheard a few popular names being mentioned. Hichio said that regardless of the outcome of the palace examination, the 3 of us women are bound to earn scholarly honors. This is the first time His Majesty has allowed women to take the imperial examinations, so our positions are of utmost importance. Will His Majesty specifically look out for women? Hichio laughed heartily. That won't happen, believe it or not. Once the results are out, the essays of us 3 female scholars will be scrutinized repeatedly. If there's even a single mistake, people will make a big deal out of it. She really takes it lightly. Hichio said that His Majesty probably wouldn't give women very high rankings, so there's no need to think about the top 3 positions. On the day the results were actually announced, I was stunned by the ranking that was revealed. Top scholar, Lin Zhaohua. The announcement of this ranking caused the surrounding scholars to lose their composure. Someone shouted, I refuse to accept this. How can a woman become the top scholar? Women should marry, serve their husbands, and raise children. How are they fit to serve as officials in the court? All eyes turned to me, surprised, disdainful, resentful, like a thorn in the back, as if I had taken something that belonged to someone else. The next moment, someone came over holding a stack of papers. It was the chief eunuch by the emperor's side. This is the palace examination essay of the top scholar, Lin. His Majesty has specifically ordered copies to be made for all the jincha to study. If any of you believe your own essays are better, His Majesty will have yours circulated for everyone to read as well. As soon as these words were spoken, a few people fell silent. They naturally knew their own level could not withstand scrutiny. My article was almost in everyone's hands, and after a long while, whispers began to spread. How could a woman have written such an article? The gaze upon me did not diminish, until the chief eunuch announced, His Majesty summons the first-ranked candidate for an audience. I went to the imperial study with the second and third place scholars, seeing the person on the dragon throne again. Some memories suddenly flooded back. I listened with my head lowered to whatever His Majesty said, responding only when a reply was needed, until he said, "The top scholar shall stay." So when the second and third place scholars left, my legs gave way, and I knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, please forgive my offense." Thinking back to when the emperor was staying in my humble home, the things I arranged would have been enough to cost me 10 heads. Fortunately, I am now alone, with no 9 clans to be executed. The person on the dragon throne said disdainfully, "What a disgrace. Don't tell anyone I taught you. I can't bear the shame. Your subject was unaware of your Majesty's identity at the time. I sincerely beg your Majesty to forgive my offenses." The emperor, "Now you're scared. If I intended to punish you, I wouldn't have personally selected you as the top scholar." I lowered my head, remaining silent. The man on the dragon throne asked, "Didn't you once swear that women couldn't take the imperial exams? Now that you stand here, what are your thoughts?" "I am grateful to your Majesty. This was the truth from my heart. Lin Jiaohua, you saved my life, and I grant you a path to success. Are you satisfied?" I then raised my head, somewhat hesitant. "Your Majesty, this new law couldn't possibly be." The emperor scoffed, "Don't flatter yourself. The new law was drafted several years ago, 2 years ago. Before I decided to promulgate it, I went on an incognito inspection tour and was assassinated. That's when you found me." Assassination. This sentence reveals too much. If something had really happened to the emperor 2 years ago, the young crown prince would be on the throne now, and the new laws would never have been promulgated. In other words, the emperor was assassinated because of the new laws. Did your Majesty appoint me as the top scholar because of the new laws? If it were for the sake of the new law, appointing either He Qiu or Feng Yingqin would be more suitable than you. They at least come from prominent families. The man on the dragon throne said, "The cabinet originally ranked you as the third place scholar. Do you know why I personally appointed you as the top scholar?" "Forgive my ignorance, your Majesty. Your essay truly reflected a genuine investigation into the people's conditions and was substantial in content. I need an official who serves the people, and you happen not to belong to any faction. I have no qualms about elevating you to great heights. I was stunned 2 years ago, when I carried this man of unknown origins back home. I never imagined that the person I had brought back would turn out to be such a powerful ally. I have one more question. Ask, why did your Majesty allow women to take the imperial examinations?" Upon hearing this, the man on the dragon throne fell silent for a long moment. When I was still the crown prince, the empress and I grew up together. That year, the late emperor fell ill, and I was tasked with overseeing the imperial examinations in his stead. The empress disguised herself as a man and sneaked into the examination hall. If I hadn't recognized her handwriting at the last moment, our dynasty would have had a top scholar who was a woman in disguise. The crime of deceiving the emperor was something the empress could not bear, and even I could not protect her. I withdrew her examination paper and have kept it to this day. Take a look. A piece of Xian paper, clearly aged by the years, was presented before me. Well preserved, showing great care. I skimmed through it quickly, marveling at the grandeur of the article. "Her Majesty the Empress's talent far surpasses that of your subject," the Emperor said. The Empress later told me that she did not enjoy being an official. She was simply unwilling to accept why women could not serve as officials. After I was assassinated and all news of me vanished, it was the Empress alone who managed the court affairs well. She has the talent for governing the country. If she were a man, I imagine she would hold a high position in the court by now. I lowered my gaze. The Empress, as the mother of the nation, is equally important. To have such a queen is a blessing for our dynasty. The Emperor laughed again. "The Empress seems to like you, because you said that after my passing, her life would be unimaginably wonderful. Your Majesty, please forgive my offense." I knelt down and kowtowed once more, feeling that my head was not very secure. "Enough, you may leave. Do not disappoint me. Being the top scholar is a very proud and satisfying thing, But being a female top scholar is not easy. The 6 arts of a gentleman, my father taught me some of them before, and in the past 2 years, I've hired a master to learn even more during the parade. More eyes fell upon me in previous years. During such times, the handkerchiefs of well-bred young ladies would often be thrown at the scholars they fancied, but this year, I was the first, but I found that quite a few pouches were thrown, even from both men and women. I caught a few, and when I looked up, I spotted a familiar face on the upper floor of a tea house by the street. The young master I had encountered at the jewelry shop that day smiled and tossed a pouch toward me, as if congratulating me on my success. He was so handsome that it made my heart race. Returning to the residence, Ginkgo was overjoyed. Sister Hua, do you know that you've become a role model for women in the capital now? A role model? Yes, the emperor praised you for your talent, and the women in the capital have taken you as an example. Many families are now preparing to send their daughters to school. I fell silent for a moment and understood the emperor's instruction not to let him down. When women could also achieve scholarly honors, the daughters in the family became more precious. Although it is difficult to change everyone's mindset overnight, over time, change will inevitably come. I believe His Majesty is indeed a wise ruler, regardless of gender. As long as they are his subjects, he gives them opportunities to rise above their circumstances. I heard that last year a female general was appointed, and this year there are female top scholars and female scholars. Apart from me, they come from prominent families, and their fathers and brothers, for the sake of the family, would also agree to let women serve as officials, standing against those who oppose the idea. The title of top scholar indeed proved useful, as invitations kept pouring in for several days in a row. On the day of the official appointment, I stood in the grand hall, enduring various scrutinizing gazes, standing tall and straight. This was the most glorious moment of my life yet. There were those who couldn't stand to see me succeed. I have a memorial to present. It was Yi Shichen. He stepped forward, glanced at me, then addressed the man on the dragon throne. I wish to impeach the newly appointed top scholar, Lin Zhaohua. This person is both my fellow townsman and my former fiancé. Because she engaged in improper relations with another man, I broke off the engagement. I believe such a shameless woman is unfit to serve as an official of the court. As soon as these words were spoken, an uproar erupted throughout the hall. Impeachment seemed to pour forth as if prearranged. I lowered my gaze, unmoved, until a slow, deliberate voice came from above. Attendant Yi, the person you are impeaching is the top scholar I personally appointed. Do you have any evidence? I have witnesses. My fellow townspeople can all testify that Lin Zhaohua harbored a man of unknown origin in her home for a long time. As soon as that man left, she also departed. How can such a person, who engaged in illicit relations without proper arrangements, serve as a role model for women? The Minister of Rights spoke up. Your Majesty, I believe Attendant Yi makes a valid point. Why not summon the witnesses to identify her, so as to avoid wrongfully accusing top scholar Lin? Is the witness present? Yi Shichen hurriedly replied, Your Majesty, my father and the village chief are both waiting outside the hall. Summon them. When the village chief and Yi's father entered, their expressions were evasive, their postures timid, clearly nervous as well. They never looked up, kneeling down to pay their respects. Then came the identification. Your Majesty, please see clearly. I swear by the lives of my entire family that this Lin Zhaohua truly has a lover. Her father passed away just a year ago, and she brought a man home without a matchmaker, engaging in an illicit affair. It's utterly shameless. The emperor's voice took on a hint of mockery. Oh, so do you remember what that lover looked like? I remember. Raise your heads. Let me have a look. The village chief and Yi's father looked up at the command. With just one glance, both men were so frightened that they collapsed to the ground. Yi Shichen was puzzled. Father, village chief, the emperor asked again. Do you still remember what the mistress of the top scholar Lin looked like? This time, the two men looked terrified, shaking their heads like rattles. Your Majesty, forgive us, we humble subjects do not remember. One moment you remember, the next you don't. Do you know how the crime of deceiving the emperor is punished? This statement was met with pleas for mercy from the two men. Yi Shichen was stunned. The emperor then chuckled again. I have an interesting story to share with you all. 2 years ago, while I was traveling incognito, I was pursued by rebels and was fortunate enough to be rescued by a woman. While recovering from my injuries, I heard that this woman once had a fiancé. He came from a poor family, and it was her family who provided the money and effort to support his education. However, after he passed the imperial examination, he returned to his hometown to break off the engagement. Now, he has married the daughter of a high-ranking official and his career is flourishing. What do you all think should be done with such an ungrateful person? Is there really such a despicable person in this world? I believe this person is unworthy of being an official of the court. I disdain being associated with such a heartless and ungrateful individual. May I ask who the person your majesty is referring to is? With each sentence, Yi Shiqin's face grew paler. He staggered slightly until the emperor addressed his father-in-law. Minister Liu, what do you think? Upon hearing this, Minister Liu paused. I believe that if the person has achieved political accomplishments after taking office, the punishment may be considered with discretion. Then, in Minister Liu's view, how should these two individuals, who have committed the crime of deceiving the emperor, be dealt with? Falsely accusing the newly appointed top scholar, deceiving the sovereign, and behaving improperly before the throne according to the law. This warrants 80 lashes and exile to 3,000 li away. Upon hearing this, Yi's father and the village chief were filled with terror, pleading, Your Majesty, have mercy. Yi Shiqin also knelt down, saying, Your Majesty, my father is elderly, I beg your Majesty to show leniency. The monarch was not one to be easily swayed. Yi Shidu, do I look easy to fool? The emperor thundered in anger. Guards, drag him away. Additionally, Yi Shiqin is demoted to a Hanlin Academy compiler and fined 3 months' salary. After Yi Shiqin was demoted, he became a 7th-rank Hanlin Academy compiler, while I was appointed as a 6th-rank Hanlin Academy senior compiler. It is said that his father did not survive those 80 strokes 2 years ago. The emperor spared their lives. But who would have thought they would come seeking death again after receiving the official appointment? I haven't taken up my post so quickly, but there have been many invitations and numerous marriage proposals. All kinds of suitors are dazzling to the eye. After all, women in official positions are not forbidden from marrying like He Qiu and Feng Yingqin. They both have fiancés until I was invited to the palace banquet, where I had a couple of drinks and left the table to get some fresh air in the corridor. The evening breeze blew gently. The palace servants were busy, making this place unusually quiet. Before I knew it, I saw a tall figure approaching. Upon seeing who had arrived, my eyes lit up. I haven't had the chance to personally congratulate you yet, Lord Lin. Congratulations on your success in the imperial examination. Young master, why are you also in the palace? Which family's young master are you? My surname is Xie. Lord Lin may call me Jinyu. Jinyu, such an elegant name. The other person chuckled. Yes, when I was born, my father, upon first seeing me, thought I was a girl and gave me this name. Later, it became my courtesy name. Young Master Xie truly is more beautiful than any maiden. I praised with genuine sincerity, but the surname Xie, I was a bit slow to react. Are you a member of the royal family? The current emperor's surname is Xie, and his given name is Yunjing. I saw the empress he spoke of tonight, a dignified and graceful woman. Her maiden name is Cheng Lanyu, and back when the emperor was in exile, he used his wife's surname as his alias. It shows how deep their affection was. Xie Jinyu replied, We are somewhat related by marriage, but I am one of the younger ones in the family. Apart from eating, drinking, and having fun, I am of no use for anything else, just an idler. Speaking with him was indeed more interesting than exchanging toasts with others at the palace banquet. If Lord Lin is on leave, may I come to visit you? Of course you may. I gave him my own address, but forgot to ask where Xie Jinyu lived when I took office. Most of my colleagues were men. Although they didn't openly mock me, they were unwilling to engage with me. I wasn't in a hurry. In their eyes, they were isolating me, hoping I would back down from the challenge. In the emperor's eyes, they were neglecting their duties. After making an example of them, these men were finally able to communicate. I had met Xie Jinyu a few times, and he was truly beautiful. I couldn't help but stare at his face until he asked, Why do you always stare at me, Lord Lin? I snapped back to my senses, feeling a bit apologetic. Young Master Xie is just too handsome. I couldn't help myself. With just one sentence, I managed to make Xie Jinyu's ears turn red. 3 months into my official duties, the Emperor summoned me. As soon as I stepped into the imperial study, the sound of a teacup shattering echoed. Immediately after, the Emperor angrily rebuked, Xie Qishuan, with so many young ladies in the capital you could choose, you dare to ask for the top scholar I personally appointed. I worked so hard to promote a top scholar, not to have them become your princess consort. Xie Qishuan, the personal name of the Emperor's younger brother, Prince En. I looked over and saw a person kneeling inside the hall. It was Xie Jinyu. Is Xie Jinyu Xie Qishuan, the Prince of En? I was stunned. Your servant pays respects to your majesty. I bowed, my mind somewhat unsettled. The person beside me looked over, those affectionate eyes staring at me, making my heart race. Lin Zhaohua, the Emperor's voice carried a hint of danger. Do you recognize the person beside you, your majesty? I know him. Do you know he is the Prince of En? I know now, the Emperor said coldly. The Prince of En wishes to ask me to arrange a marriage for you. Since you are my savior, I am giving you a choice. Would you rather become the princess consort of En or serve as a compiler in the Hanlin Academy? Princess consort, 1st rank, editor, 6th rank. Perhaps I will never be able to achieve the position of a 1st rank official in my lifetime. Imperial brother, why can't Zhaohua serve as both the princess consort of En and an editor? It's not as if women who enter the court as officials are forbidden from marrying. The Emperor gritted his teeth as he glared at his foolish younger brother. She can get married, but not to you. If she becomes the princess consort of En, who will remember that she is the top scholar, who will remember that her achievements were earned through the imperial examinations. After a long silence, I lowered my gaze and replied, Your Majesty, I choose the latter. Before the Emperor could speak, the man beside him spoke with reddened eyes. Zhaohua, you clearly agreed to my proposal. Yesterday, I had accepted his proposal. Xie Qishuan had joyfully said he would go home and ask his elder brother to arrange the betrothal gifts, but he never mentioned that his elder brother was the Emperor. The Emperor snorted coldly. Since the decision has been made, all of you, get out of my sight. Prince En, also known as Xie Qishuan, stopped me in the corridor. Zhaohua, how could you go back on your word? The Emperor is soft-hearted. As long as we persist, he will agree. I looked at the person before me. Xie Qishuan seemed to be 2 years younger than me. Just at that impulsive age. Your Highness, I sighed, I truly cannot marry you. I am the first female top scholar, and I come from a humble background. If I become your princess consort, how will others view it? They will say that women take the imperial exams just to climb the social ladder. I do not represent only myself, but also countless women. I cannot cut off their path. Xie Qishuan was stunned. Your Highness is young and momentarily swayed by emotions. In time, it will pass. Let us treat it as a dream. I'm leaving, walking in haste. Indeed, handsome men are dangerous. Almost lost my official hat. I avoided Xie Qishuan for a few days, just in time for He Qiu and Feng Yingqin to invite me for a drink. Zhaohua, I heard that Prince En proposed to you. I don't know who leaked the news, but now it's causing quite a stir, and I've even been impeached. Feng Yingqin put her arm around my shoulder. Prince En is so handsome. Why did you refuse him? I sighed. Why do all you men from the capital love to hide your identities? An emperor, a prince, just how many heads do I have to lose? He Qiu laughed heartily. My fiancé is good friends with Prince En. I heard he's been drowning his sorrows for days now. Do you really not regret it? A little bit, I do, but compared to one's future prospects, it's nothing. I buried myself in my own work, spending every day at the Hanlin Academy, where I could also occasionally see Yi Shichen. He was annoyed with me but couldn't do anything about it, especially since my official rank was higher than his. It felt great, especially since he made another mistake and was soon demoted from the capital. The daughter of the Minister of Revenue he had married at home wanted to divorce him. Business washed away that bit of regret. Time passed neither too slowly nor too quickly. In my 2nd year as an official, I was promoted to a reader. In my 3rd year as an official, The emperor sent me to manage the flood disaster in the carriage leaving the capital. I saw a noble prince inside. Xie Qishuan, Lord Lin, I am going out to gain experience and will accompany you. My official hat was hanging by a thread. Xie Qishuan absolutely refused to return to the capital, so I could only send a letter back to report the situation later. After the flood control efforts were completed, I returned to the capital and was promoted again. At that time, several female officials had joined the court. As a result, some ministers impeached me, claiming that I had been alone with Prince and outside the capital and demanding that I take responsibility for him, otherwise, I would be accused of defiling the royal family. The emperor remained silent for a long time before finally granting the marriage. He said that as long as my political achievements outshone the title of princess and his efforts would not be in vain. On the day of the wedding, Xie Qishuan drank heavily. He kissed my lips and murmured, "Sister Zhao Hua, who can stand this?" After getting married, Xie Qishuan and I went to court together. Not long after, someone else impeached us, saying that a husband and wife serving as officials together was suspicious of forming cliques. So this is what they were waiting for. Brothers, fathers and sons, brothers-in-law, and teachers and students are all over the court. Why don't they say that's forming cliques? The emperor replied without hesitation, "Princeton, go back to your mansion and be your vase, so you won't come here to anger me." The ministers were speechless. Xie Qishuan, your servant brother obeys the imperial decree. Extra, the emperor's ramblings. No one understands gratitude better than I do. No one. Come and fight if you're not convinced. That's all for today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. See you in the next video.